and welcome to the Snickerdoodle Knits channel. I am Jessica, the knitter and designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits, and in this video I'm going to talk about my Trust Shawl pattern design. I'll talk about the inspiration behind the design, the techniques used in the design, and then some yarn recommendations. So to get started, this shawl, the Trust Shawl, is one of 4 shawl designs included in my Guiding Principles shawl collection that was released at the beginning of 2020. The idea of the collection is that there are 4 shawl patterns, each with a guiding principle that is useful for us throughout our lives. And specifically, this was talking about for the year 2020. When we start a new year, we have a lot of goals and hopes and aspirations, a lot of things we want to accomplish, but things don't always happen the way we want them to happen, and there are a lot of characteristics that we need to be successful in the year and in life. So the collection talks about 4 of these different characteristics that I think are important for really being successful in life. So this shawl is the Trust Shawl, there is the Endurance Shawl, there is the Hope Shawl, and there is the Patience Shawl. So the Trust Shawl specifically talks about things that we can trust in when maybe we're confused or we're lost or we're concerned, when things aren't peachy and maybe we need something we can lean on. So what are those things in your life that you can trust on? Your friends or your livelihood? What is it that you lean on and depend on for guidance? So the reason that this shawl is named the Trust Shawl is because I used some very basic stitches. It's primarily knit stitches and purl stitches. So it's stitches that you can depend on. Stitches that you know what you're getting into. It's not a big complicated lace design, and it's not a whole bunch of brioche, or it's a simple, trusty shawl. And the other half of that is that this is a 3/4 shawl shape, and to me it's just like a big hug. It's made out of DK weight yarn, so it's really cozy, and the idea is that this is a big shawl you can just wrap yourself up in, that you can give yourself a big hug, and that you can trust on for warmth and for comfort. So there's 2 parts really to the meaning behind the Trust Shawl and the symbolism that I have put in it. So to talk about the techniques in the pattern itself, I already mentioned it's primarily knit stitches and purl stitches. It is all knit as one piece. There's no seaming. So I don't know if you're familiar with 3/4 shawl shape, but essentially the 3/4 shawl shape is 3 of 4 triangles that would make up a square. So you can see this middle part is 1 triangle, this side part is 1 triangle, and this other side part is the 3rd triangle. And if we were to have a 4th triangle down here, that would make a complete square. So the 2 side triangles, the 2 side panels, are mirrored. They're identical. They are a chevron texture, so it's just knits and purls like I mentioned. And then the center section is a bit more scattered in its texture. It's not as consistent. It's more of a random line pattern, kind of like random dashes. So this is primarily stockinette with, I think it's like every 6th row. I think so. That has some of this purl texture on it. Of course, this is knit flat, so when you're knitting the right side, it's a lot of knit stitches, and when you're knitting the wrong side, it's a lot of purl stitches in this middle section. And the side sections, of course, with that chevron, they have a lot more variety mixed up of that knits and purls. So it's not all knits and purls, because I do have increases happening along each spine. So here's a set of increases on either side of this line, and there's a set of increases on the other side of this line, and of course on each edge there's some increases as well. So it's not all knits and purls, but it's pretty much like 95% or more knits and purls. And then the very bottom is just lined with the garter section. So this pattern is extremely easy to customize. You can make it longer or shorter very easily. You just stop when you want to stop, and you keep knitting if you want to keep knitting, and then you just do the garter section on the bottom, which, as you can see, when you're knitting that ends up being along the sides and the bottom. You'll just work that garter when you're ready to be done. Now this is designed as a 3-skein DK weight shawl. I also think it would be lovely as a 4-skein DK weight shawl, just to add some more length and coziness to make it like a blanket. I did have one test knitter make it 4 skeins long. So if you check out the Ravelry projects page, you can see some different projects that other people have made with this pattern. And then of course, to finish the design, I added 2 tassels to each end. And that's just gives it some character, and it also, I really love how tassels, especially when you make them full and large, help keep a shawl in place, because they just add some extra weight to keep that shawl hanging down. So, this is kind of the easiest way to style it for me. I like to just have the V kind of over my shoulder, and this allows me to have my arms free, especially in my right arm. I'm right-handed, so I do a lot of stuff, obviously, with my right hand and right arm. So I like how that gives me some freedom, especially if I bring this farther over my shoulder, and then this arm is completely free. You can bring this end on top, or sometimes I'll bring it underneath and have the other end on top and the back. The tassels do show, or of course you could wrap them around, or just skip the tassels altogether if you don't like the tassels. Another way, of course, is to just wrap it around your shoulders. This is great if you spend a lot of time at a computer, or if you are sitting and knitting at night and you maybe don't want all the bulk in front of you, but you want something cozy to wrap around you. This is great for that. Let's see. I guess if there were any other ways that I had thought of styling it, I guess I've wrapped it around the front, basically the same way, just the opposite of wrapping it around your shoulders. If your front tends to be more cold, just wrap it around your front, and it's essentially a blanket around the front of you. Yeah, so I think that's mostly how I've styled this shawl. I'll include some pictures if there's something that I'm missing. But I think it's actually pretty easy to style for a different shape. I'm not used to, this was the first 3/4 shape that I'd made before, and I was pleasantly surprised with that. So, I talked about stitch patterns. As far as the level of knitter, I recommend that you be familiar with the knit stitch for sure, and probably the purl stitch before you start this. But it's a very simple pattern technique-wise. The increases are quite simple. I have links to tutorials in the pattern that explain how to do these increases, so I feel confident that you have the support you need to figure that out. I don't recommend this as your very first ever pattern because I do recommend that you have some base knowledge of at least what the knit stitch is. The most complex part about this design is the way that it's written. So I've split up the sections because the repeat of the side panels is different than the repeat of the middle panels. I think personally that it's really clear and easy to read. It splits up the lines so it's not as much to read in one row, but it does split it up onto different pages. So the side panels are one page and the center panel is another page. So for row 1, you knit the side panel, or you work the side panel and then you work the center panel and then you work the side panel again. And you do that for every single row. So I think it's simple, but when you first see it, you might be a little bit confused because it's not like just work each row linearly. It's kind of work this row and then that row, this part of the row and then this part of the row before you go to the next row. So if you have any questions about that kind of stuff, you're always welcome to reach out to me for pattern support, my email, my website, or via social media. I will say that well, my camera just cut me off. So what I was saying was go ahead and reach out to me on social media, email, my website to get pattern support, and on Instagram. Do know that it might take me a little bit longer to get back to you just because of the way Instagram directs conversations with people that I haven't talked to before. So yeah, I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you're interested in purchasing the pattern, I'll leave all of those links down below for Pattern Find, LoveCrafts, and Ravelry. So all 3 of those will be down below. And if you liked this video, if it answered your questions, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and check out some of the other videos that I have. I have some video tutorials about just techniques that I use in my patterns, and I have a video just like this for every one of my designs that outlines kind of the inspiration behind the design, the techniques in the design, information that I think is helpful to know about the design. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I hope to see you around. Happy knitting!